Thank you for joining us on this episode of Diaspora Lounge. We're talking about sexless marriages. Friday, I hope your week has been good. Now, let's get the information from this conversation and take it home and over the weekend think about it. Remember that everything that we talk about here is candid and sincere from our hearts. We only speak the truth. And so before we start, I am going to crave your understanding because some of the things that you're going to hear from me in this conversation might be provocative, but um, I also know that one or two, or maybe all of the other hosts will maybe say some things, but it's all coming from a place of telling ourselves the truth because we fumbled for so long. And I've been asking myself, and I'm sure that many people have, all the conversations that I have every day, we're always going back to why haven't people been saying this? Why haven't the older ones said these things? Why are we left to go and navigate these things and then start to have medicine after death? So let's just go in with sincerity, get to the root of the problem, because when you have an understanding of what the problem is, that's the only time that you can begin to think about how to even solve what you're struggling with. Thank you again for joining us. Right, Tony Usidamen and Bishop Oscar Osai were expecting Sheye. We're talking from the angle. There are different types of sexless marriages. Here we're talking from the angle of when one is being deprived with no explanation from the other. We're not talking about if just any time that you have a sexless marriage, somebody just stops, or maybe they were never even having it, and there is no explanation given to the other one. And the first thing that I want to tell you is that a gentleman said he's lived with it like that for about 20 years in his marriage, and that he's just waiting for when he will die so that he can live this life of misery because his wife just locked up about 20 years ago and he doesn't want to step outside. He doesn't want to have any extramarital affair with anybody else because he wants to keep his vows. So he's just now waiting. After asking God, why has this happened to him? He's just now waiting. And then somebody came and made a comment saying that God will bless him for his
Wow.
sacrifice, that when he dies and goes to heaven, that God will bless him for his sacrifice. So,
Wow.
yeah. What is your take, uh, Tony?
Um, so I have had some time to reflect on the subject for today, and I'm happy that we're talking about this because this is something that a lot of people are actually dealing with in their marriages. Unfortunately, there isn't much, you know, discuss around around it, as with many other issues that we sort of, you know, want to keep secret, as if a lot of people are not actually, facing that situation. For our younger audience listening to us, people who are not married, the tendency is to think that marriage is a ticket to quick, spontaneous, lustful, passionate, and regular sex. You know, the kind that we talk about or we read about in romance novels and movies. What movies portray generally what we see depicted in works of art. While this may be true for some people, especially in the first few years, it's not the reality that most couples are living. If you ask those who have been married for, say, 5 years or longer, um, it would seem that sexual intimacy tends to wane over time. One of the explanations that you would hear people frequently, especially people who are married, when they're talking about this in small groups, or one of the things you would hear is that life happens, priorities change, as if that is okay. I mean, look at the example you cited now. Someone in a sexless marriage for over 20 years, just waiting to die. And then somebody comes to comment that he will be rewarded. I really do not want that kind of reward or that kind of life. I feel for that person, really. So why is this a thing? Why are so many couples facing this problem? I put it down to two two things. The first, as I like to call it, are the pre-marriage issues. Um, in a conversation with you, Uzo, offline, I did mention that one of the biggest issues is that a lot of us go into marriages first not knowing who we are and what we want, before we decide to make a commitment to another person. And then, as if that is not bad enough, we don't do the work of getting to know the other person, getting to see if we're aligned in terms of, values, our worldviews, our habits, things that should really, really matter to us. We either outrightly close our eyes to them or we downplay them, as if, on the scale of things, they weren't important, especially when we see other things that seemingly are more important to us in a marriage relationship. And then down the line, we see that those things that we either refused to look at or downplayed, thinking that other things would compensate for them, those seemingly minor things become very major issues during marriage. And those things that appeared minor during the courtship period now become so big that they drive a wedge between um, couples. So there are those issues that we fail to look at, um, before we actually decide to enter into a committed relationship with someone. I would go into those issues in greater detail later, but just in terms of perspective, there are the pre-marriage issues, and then the second part of it are the during marriage issues. Um, a lot of people resign once they're getting married, both men and women. During the chase, we're doing all of the right things. Butterflies are flying. Everyone is excited, and then it seems like we have got our reward, and there is no more. We've got our reward, which is a ring for the women, men for the men, the wife, the trophy, and then we have everything we want. Suddenly there's no motivation to do those things that we were doing that were exciting us, that were making both of us, feel very happy and in love. We stop those things altogether, or we reduce them to the point that they start to affect the relationship that we have. I say that marriage is like a machine. A machine needs to be oiled so that the parts will continue to work effectively. And if both parties in a marriage do not do the work of oiling the wheels of the relationship, as they did pre-marriage, then of course it would definitely drive a wedge between them. Intimacy will wane over time. And I think, broadly speaking, these two categories are what I have identified
Mm.
as the reasons why sexless marriages are becoming more prevalent these
I think
days.
you took the whole thing. We ran the whole gamut. How about, okay, I'll let Bishop address it this way now. So let me narrow it down because we're talking specifically about, we know that there are so many reasons that could be, and now we're talking specifically about it's happening. It is somebody, it's not that these two people it has waned. It is that somebody has decided, has just locked up and hasn't given an explanation to the other person. And the other person has no understanding of what's happening and is living that way. So why should we even have a situation like that?
So sorry, Uzo, it's linked because you don't know what got the other person to the point where they locked up.
Okay.
It might have been related to something the other party also did and did not address over time that got the person to a stage where they locked up. So we can't look at things in isolation. It's all
Okay.
linked, Uzo.
All
Yes.
right. Thank you.
But
Bishop.
I'd like to hear from Bishop.
I'd like to first of all say that Ozo should just let Tony be. Eh? Yes, because in your intro, I take it that you're doing your intro. And even if we can't see how linked they are, just allow people to explore. To explore, you know what I'm saying? Just feel free explore. As you are
Okay.
exploring, we're picking nuggets. Even if they are not relevant, if people continue to say everything right, conversations would have stopped. So
Okay.
let's feel free to even be wrong sometimes. Well, now coming to the issue on board, I wanted to add to the gamut that Tony has expressed the fact that life really does happen. Sometimes normal marriages have issues such as this sexlessness because some of us have things in our background sometimes. I'll give you a typical example. A lady that was raped as a young child or a teenager will almost always become frigid. The mere idea of relaxing with somebody and therefore being able to offer self is something that somebody will have some traumatic displays before it's dealt with. Yeah. So I'm just
Yeah.
saying that one, some people may have had traumas in their life that are unresolved. Then, two, there are also health issues. What I notice in our conversations, I see Uzo representing the women, and I
Never.
am waiting. No, hold
Never.
on,
Uzo has never presented as that too.
Never.
hold
I
on,
am
hold on.
never
Let
a
me land.
women's advocate.
Okay, no, it's not even being a woman's advocate here,
Okay.
but I am just saying that when I listen to Tony as well, I see a man
Right.
talking. Uzo, when you talk like a lady. Yes, you are a lady. But let's remove ourselves completely, yeah, so that we can be dispassionate. Look, a lady may be closing up because of past experiences. A man may be closing up because he has health issues. There are issues of erectile dysfunction.
So the topic was why is there silence?
Hold on,
Right.
that's the second
Yeah.
aspect. That's the second aspect. The very first thing is there sexlessness? Yes. Why? By the time we determine why, and don't take me away from my what I'm trying to say. The third thing I wanted to say is that I see us getting better. The society is developing and growing. These things we are discussing today, 15, 20 years ago, you couldn't discuss it. You
True,
notice that,
very true.
you see, so we are growing, we are becoming better communicators. Yeah. If you notice, marriages those years were always submission to authority, love me, and before I submit, or submit before I love you. Those were the normal issues.
Those issues are still there. Oh.
they, they are there, but you can see that this sexlessness is coming in. And if it continues to be explored and discussed, it will gather momentum that sometimes you may even find that the problem of submission or lack of love is because of that.
True.
Yeah. So I see us growing as a people in our African setting. Those of you who are in diaspora have better expressive capacities or competencies than us here. So now, I am trying to establish, yes, that there can be sexlessness because one, there may be health issues. Two, there may be traumatic experiences. Three, that there was the third one I said now. Um, I'm trying to remember the third point I made. Okay. All right. Now, I also want to say that this conversation is part of the healing process. People may not be willing to open up because it's a very sensitive thing. If a man has erectile problems, you can imagine that he cannot discuss it like somebody that has malaria.
Mm, true.
But the issue is it's an ill health. So why the hang up over an ill health? You understand what I'm saying? Why are you so particular about this ill health that you can't discuss it? Now, this is where education comes in, enlightenment, maturity. Yeah? After all, somebody can have tuberculosis. Somebody has AIDS. People have AIDS. In fact, people with AIDS, this is we're even getting to know. Yeah. So I'm saying that part of holding back is that the African man in particular thinks that his being a man is reinforced by his ability to perform in the other room, according to one president.
Zahozarum.
Yeah, yeah. But many of us also do not know that women, to a larger majority of women, have different definitions of affection. Yeah. A man is provoked by what he sees. A man becomes active because of what he sees. But there are women whose manifestation of love or even sex is conversations, intimate discussions. Yeah. They're not like us. So what I'm therefore saying is, as we continue to as it were drill down, we're going to unearth a lot of issues that have to do with this conversation that can help us release our minds, feel free, come to terms with your reality of your situation so that we can begin to have better marriages, better relationships. Let me stop at this point.
Okay. I see what you've done there, because the way that we started the conversation with my introduction was talking of a specific area, but
Yeah.
what what you've now done is taken what Tony provided and
Yeah.
taken us to talk about the whole thing. So now
Yes.
we're doing a full intro of the whole thing. We're not just dealing with that aspect, right? Okay, so
Yes.
so you've done that. Now, I'm still going to now take us back to exactly that. So if you find yourself two people in a relationship of marriage, and somebody has locked up and the other person has no idea why, and they're living like that. Why are people living like that? It doesn't make sense because the question is, it doesn't make sense. Why are people living like that? This is a marriage. And we know that when you go to a pot in the kitchen and take food, the intention is that you're going to eat it. So
Yes.
if you have a marriage, part of what comes with a marriage is physical intimacy and sexual activities. So how do you have a marriage where you don't even say, I'm not going to fulfill the terms of this contract or this agreement, and then the other party just accepts and lives like that? It doesn't make any sense.
Mm.
Can I introduce a variable
Okay, Bishop, go ahead.
before Tony? Okay. I want us all, those listening to us, to understand that the law here in Nigeria regards something as being a marriage when it is consummated. And it's being consummated is sexual intimacy.
Hmm.
In other words, if you deny that sexual intimacy, the law in Nigeria doesn't regard what you have as a marriage.
Right.
The law everywhere.
I'm talking, well, I operate here, so I
Mm.
know here.
Yeah, I'm just adding that. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Therefore, the partners, those of us who are Christians, the basis of divorce allowed by Christianity is infidelity. But the question is, before infidelity becomes the issue, did you have a marriage?
Oh, oh, you're talking about people who started off with no consummation. That's what you're
Yes,
talking about.
and
Mm.
continue doing it. Again, it is left for the courts to tell us if you started maybe 1 or 2 years, and for 20 years you closed up, like you said. Can that
Okay.
be can that be recognized by the law
Why am I
as
interested in what the law is saying when
as non
when it,
no, the point I'm even making is non-consummation. Does
Legally,
it
yeah.
legally, does this end with that first night?
No,
The,
I
the
think
law,
yes. To answer you, Bishop, okay. First, before I answer, just to say, when you say Christianity, that's like a blanket generalization because I grew up a Catholic,
okay.
even though I'm not a practicing Catholic. I know that infidelity is not grounds for divorce in the Catholic Church.
Even in the
Recognize the
even in the
recognized
Pentecostal
ground,
church,
yeah, the
even in the
recognized
Pentecostal
ground
church,
is um, the non-consummation. For instance, if a man um, was diagnosed to have um, erectile dysfunction and he knew before marriage and did not disclose this to
hmm,
the partner, that marriage is null and void because he
okay.
had pre-knowledge and did not disclose to the partner before entering into the contract. So the marriage contract is null and void.
Ab ab initio.
Yes. Yes. Other grounds for dissolution are really at the discretion of the Pope. As a matter of the fact, only the Pope can dissolve a marriage. So a Catholic man or woman who wants to divorce will only get blessings for whatever grounds.
I have
Um,
an observation.
yes. So
Can
yeah,
we? Yeah.
just like there's sorry also before you make your observation, just like there is the erectile dysfunction part. A woman, for instance, who knew that she whether by omission, commission, could not have children and did not disclose this to the man. Same for a man. If a man knew, I mean, there's erectile dysfunction, there's also sterility, where yes, you can get it up, but your sperms are not active enough to be able to impregnate a woman. Those different circumstances in the Catholic Church are sufficient grounds for
Grounds
divorce.
for
Anything
divorce. Wow.
outside of that is discretionary, and only the Pope can grant it. So even a woman in Nigeria, they would need the Pope's blessing for whatever reason outside of this, um, to have the dissolution of their marriage. I just thought to clarify that church aspect, at
Okay.
least from the point of view of the Catholics. But also, I know you wanted to say something. You were raising the flag. I wanted to talk about the legal part,
Yes.
but maybe you can
I
go ahead and say,
I
yeah.
wanted to say that I think that we're making the conversation too formal because it's not. I think we're treating it as if we're trying to educate people on those things, but that's not really what the title told them. So now they're going to be like, I didn't come here for a class. So the conversation really, yes, because for people to really take home what we're saying, we also want them to. I know that the education is interesting because some people didn't know those things and they found out today now that actually this is even protected by law, right? But let's
Mm,
really give them what we give them in the title. If you are living with this without an explanation from the spouse in a situation where a couple is living like this, why on earth is this thing going on? Right? Like, how does it look to you? How does it sound to you? Because I'll say now that it does. I said it doesn't make any sense, and I think Bishop Anthony have provided you even what I didn't want them to even bother giving you. It's for you to know now that it's actually not lawful, right? It's unlawful for you to be in a situation like this. But really, really, let's go beyond the law. I think that people are living that way because they feel like I have no choice. This is my marriage, and this person has decided this, right? But sex is like in a marriage or for a human being, it's the same as oxygen, water, food. Those are essential, like it's an essential commodity. So why would you live without an essential commodity and feel that you need to maintain this status quo or maintain this relationship? Why would anybody do that?
Uzo, I respect, your leadership of this conversation, but I really think Bishop was onto something, and I wanted to see where he was headed with that point he was making, because part of what this discussion should do is to enlighten people as to legal, practical steps that they can also take in situations like this. So the question as to whether consummation after the first night, as it were, um, is also a
Sufficiently.
factor
Uh-huh.
down the line. So if down the
Exactly.
line, one party denies the other party of sexual intimacy over a period of time, I know that legally, if a couple have lived apart and have not been intimate for 2 years, in Nigeria, it is sufficient ground for divorce legally. I know that. If they've lived
Yeah.
apart for 2 years and have not had intimacy in that period, it is sufficient ground for divorce. I don't know why Bishop brought it up, but I think Uzo, it's germane to the topic that we're discussing today, because the question about that man who stayed on in a marriage for 20 years, 20 difficult years, we'll get to what might have led to it. There was, because you said he didn't want to leave because of XYZ reason, but there was legal grounds to have got out of that
Yeah,
marriage. I don't know what's the um,
yeah,
Christian um, um, doctrines say about denial of sex for a long period of time during a marriage. I don't know. To the best of my knowledge, I mean, I explain what I know about the Catholic Church. I don't know if that counts as sufficient ground on the religious side, but legally it is sufficient ground for somebody to decide to remove themselves from that situation, because physical intimacy is an important part of marriage, I'm sure, in
okay.
the eyes of the church and in the eyes of the law. Yeah.
The reason why I was saying that is because that I don't think that that is the problem of if you say if you take a percentage of the people, the problem is not
Mm,
whether it is that they didn't know that it was legal or not. It is even with the knowledge. even with the knowledge. It's a mental thing that makes people remain in that thing. However, because of the time, we
Hmm.
will, yes, we will end this here and continue it, right, as we had said. So let's continue this conversation and then we'll bring it out again for the public, right? Is that okay?
Okay, okay, Uza.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, anyone who is there. They didn't say hello, but I can see that there are people there and I don't know who they are. So we're going to end this conversation right here and we're going to go away and bring it back again in about 2 days, right? We just wanted to have the intro today. Thanks for being with us. Thank you, gentlemen.